You guys should have all gotten a notice that we are recording today's call. I don't know if you guys can see my screen now as far as it says introduction to recruiting.
Got it.
Am I
Got
coming
it.
through, Cyrus, loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Well, today's date is April 8th, 2024. I'm Marc Mrugala, and I just kind of wanted to go into some of my passion on the recruiting aspect. And so, introduction here, today's agenda, we're going to kind of go why scouting. Are you sold on the program? The best recruiting is from within, and then parental involvement. And so, main reason why I'm in scouting, and I've encouraged a lot of other people to get involved in scouting, is, what molds a person and the impact that scouting has on young people's lives. And so I've got this little chart here of things that mold a person. You can see at the very top, now I'll see if I can get my little pen to work here. Up here at the very top, we've got environment. And, they say if you take a good person and you put them in a bad environment, most likely they will probably end up, falling into that bad type of lifestyle or behavior. But it's not a permanent thing. So what molds a person is not so much environment. What we'll start to see is as we go down the pyramid, the things that start to mold and build a person are their everyday behaviors, their skills. But what I find is really interesting is when we get down to the base, their beliefs, the source of those beliefs, and who they are, their identity. And one of the key things that really drives a person as they get older is their beliefs and their identities. And in scouting, we try to teach kids, on the Cub Scout level, do your best. When they get into Scouts BSA, it's be prepared. But what starts to really mold kids and mold young people is where are they getting some of this positive influence from? And the number one source that we get when we're growing up, where we get these beliefs and our ideals, is going to be mainly from our family. So parents, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles. And, we'll have a little bit of that as far as with teachers and stuff like that. But as a scout leader, we have an impact as far as helping to mold these kids as far as who they are and what their beliefs are. And for example, like I've got a scout that's, when the parents joined, I never got a chance to meet the parents. I only got to meet the grandma. And she's like, well, my grandson, he's hyperactive. He's really hard to control. And we said, don't worry, we're used to this. Bring him into the program. And at Blue and Gold, I finally got to meet his mom for the very first time. And when I met mom, I went over to her and I said, I'm so happy your son has joined our pack. He's been a great addition. And you could just see mom light up. You could see the scout glowing. And it broke my heart. But the mom, she goes, wow, thank you. Because we normally don't hear that from everything else that he's involved with. We always hear about how much of a handful he is. And so, and since there's been that positive affirmation that's come through, I've seen just this huge development in the scout, and I'm hoping he continues to keep going on through the ranks. But the point is what we're doing in scouting is we're not just helping kids to build Pinewood Derby cars and how to build a fire and first aid. We're helping to build and mold those identities and help them to give lifelong skills that they're going to bring along. And the reason why I'm bringing all that up is, let's see if I can clear out my annotation now. See if I can clear that all out on my next slide. There we go. Got to get my eraser. Is what I want to do is I want to, embolden people to be able to get rid of the nervousness. Because a lot of people, they're afraid to go out and do the recruiting because one, they're not really sold on the program themselves. We need to have the strength of why should I go outside my comfort zone? Because to go into a school and talk in front of a whole bunch of grade school kids about scouting is way outside of a lot of people's comfort zone. And so for me, I get that motivation of like, I'm going to go do this school talk because I know I'm going to have an impact and I'm going to help develop these kids in ways that they're not going to get inside the normal school system. So it's about overcoming some of those fears with a greater motivation. And it's perfectly okay to be a little afraid and a little bit outside of your comfort zone if it's going to help uh, have an impact on a future scout. And so that's where I want to get back to is, you have to be sold on the program. And if you're not sold on the program, it's hard for you to be able to convey that passion to somebody else. And I always tell people when I'm out in a recruiting world or a recruiting event, I always poise scouting as the premier leadership program in the world. And I always love talking about the famous Eagle Scouts. And years ago, my son, he went to Jamboree, and when he came back from Jamboree, he had this deck of trading cards. And I thought the deck of trading cards was really cheesy, but it was a whole bunch of trading cards that was talking about all the different famous Eagle Scouts. And as I started to go through that deck, I started to see people like Steven Spielberg, um, Jim Rowe from Dirty Jobs. Saw people like the last two CEOs for AT&T. Between those two guys, they make $80 billion, or I'm sorry, $80 million, and so it was like, what do these things have in common is that they learned leadership skills and how to be part of that segment of movers and shakers all through scouting. And I watched an interview with Steven Spielberg, and he was talking about what got him going in film was actually the photography merit badge. And he had to make a small film, and that's when he got hooked in the film world. So it's like we don't know what's going to happen as these scouts get older, but we can't get them into the program unless we're getting to them while we're young. And so I'm always pushing about the Cub Scout world. And so the sad thing is in the Cub Scout world, we lose a lot of them as we're going over and crossover. And Jeff, you might want to be able to chime in on this, but I think our retention rate when we cross over from Webelow into Scouts BSA, it's about 50%.
Yeah, you're right on there.
So you might have a thriving pack, and then as we're getting ready to help get them to cross over, we lose half of them, and so it's also about retention. And so I try with my scouts to help paint the vision. Hey, this is what's going on, because as they get into that fourth and fifth grade, they're starting to pay attention more to their peers. They're hearing things like Scout's not cool. And then they're also realizing, I'm not having as much fun in Scouts, because when they were younger, building a Pinewood Derby car, oh, that was a lot of fun. But now as they're getting older, it's like, hey, I've done a lot of this stuff over and over again. We've visited the police station a few times. They don't see what's coming. And so I've always encouraged the Scouts, cross over, get that first year of summer camp in. And when I was an assistant scoutmaster, that first year of summer camp was so pivotal, because if I got a scout to go to summer camp, there was about a 70 to 80% retention rate that scout was going to stay in the program for a while. Now, they might not make it to Eagle, but they weren't going to just be around for a year and drop out. They were usually around for 2 or 3 years. They went as far as they were going to go. And then the next milestone was usually around age 14, age 15, as they start to enter into high school, or I would start to lose scouts. And we would always joke that it was fumes. It was gas fumes and perfumes. So, they're involved in sports. They've got a part-time job. The homework load gets a lot heavier. And so, but the thing is trying to get them to that first year of Scouts BSA, getting them to that first summer camp where they can get hooked. And that was for me. My son was ready to drop out as a Webelow. We got him to cross over. He hit that first summer camp, and he was hooked. And you know, and then he got his eagle, and he hung around all the way till he was age 18. And so, but that's the, you know, being sold on the program and trying to keep kids in the program. And one of the best places of recruiting is from within your own organization. And so, and that's the power of communication is, you know, talking to the parents, talking to the scouts, letting them know what the next steps are, what's going on through the program, helping them to see a vision, helping them to paint the vision of why they're in scouting. And then also making sure that uh, you are taking advantage of some of the summer activities. So in the Cub Scout world, I try to get as many Cub Scouts as I can over to summer camp. And we've got some of the best camps in Wisconsin with Mrugala. And in fact, right now, all of my scouts that have made it to summer camp sign up and renew. I don't lose them. They stick around and they're hanging in the program. And I try to get those scouts to help recruit within. And I try to take as many photos as I can while I'm at summer camp so they can share these things on social media, and so they can share them with their friends. They can tell their friends all about how they were at Camp Rocolio. They shot BB guns and slingshots and all this wonderful stuff. And the final thing is the parental involvement. I try not to encourage parents to just drop their kid off and leave for an hour. If I can get moms and dads in the program with me and they're going through these activities with their scout, it helps it helps mom and dad to see the value of the program. And when these scouts, you know, graduate and they move up into that scout BSA, with the troop that I was in, there was like an 80% hit rate on Eagle Scout if mom and dad were involved with that scout. If mom and dad are not involved, that's usually when you start to see the scout get bored, getting ready to drop out. But when mom and dad are coming, mom and dad are going to this campouts, it becomes kind of a bonding situation where you'll have moms and scouts bonding, you know, dads and scouts bonding, and they're sharing and they're building memories that will last a lifetime. Because as a parent, we only get to rent our kids for about 16 years, because after age 16 and they get the car keys, they don't want to hang out with us much longer. And so, that's kind of what I want to try to do, is start to paint the picture of why do we go through this recruiting? What are we doing? And to be sold on the whole impact of the fact that we as scout leaders are going to make a difference in these young people's lives. So with that, you know, I can open that up for discussion. Looks like we might have a chat. And so, I don't know where that went to. So, but I'll stop my screen share. I'll bring that back up. And it looks like most of you guys have been muted out. But if anyone wants to add into the discussion as far as how we can help recruit and help the different packs and units to grow their unit, let me know.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
All right, I'll be the first one to speak then.
Oh, there you are. Good to hear you, Cliff.
So you and I and everybody on the thing obviously are all in agreement with what's going on, what you presented. But I think absolutely big, huge focus needs to be on program.
Okay.
And I think you touched on it when you said get those kids to summer camp.
Well, the other thing too is don't reinvent the wheel. You know,
right?
Go through the book.
But now you also talked a lot about the Cub Scout program, but you didn't get into the Scouts BSA at all.
I agree. So,
and
I have recruited, you know, scouts to go right into Scouts BSA where they didn't have any Cub Scout experience. So it does happen. And we're seeing that a lot with a lot of the girls. you know, because a
And
lot of them never came through Cub Scouts,
right.
and they're getting recruited and they're going right in. And we've got several troops now in the Ozaki County area that are
Right.
going to bring in girls in.
And that's a big one where it's recruiting from within.
Yep.
It's the unit going out and bringing it in. I think one of the things we have to try to address is making sure that the Cub program is a good, solid program, and we make sure that the troops they go into are going to be a good, solid, adventure-based program. And that's where I see a lot of the failures is the lack of the program.
Well, and that also goes back to the parental involvement. You know, I think when you have all of the weight on the Cub Master and the den leaders, um, you know, when the parents get involved, it's easier to get them to cross over.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes, but now I'm going to put on my Scoutmaster's cap.
All right.
The problem I see with a lot of parent involvement is they don't let go when they get in the Scouts BSA, and they're stifling the growth of that youth. And I know that's beyond what you're trying to do. I'm happy they're coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a start. So that's a whole nother topic for that one.
Yeah, and that's where then at that point in time I would be recommending if they're still hanging around, you get them in as an ASM. You know, because that's how they got me. You know, as I was
Well,
hanging around and learning, and they're like, "You, Mark, you're always going on the camp out. Why don't you become an assistant scoutmaster?" And then next thing I knew, I'm in Wood Badge. Um, and
uh,
so,
I know that worked for you, but I'm telling you about all my experiences, none of that has ever worked.
okay,
But that's different. I don't want to go there anyways with this thing. I want to stick with recruitment and retention, which is what you're trying to focus on. Now, that chart you showed in the beginning, where
yes.
did you get that information?
Where did I get that from?
That was interesting. That's the first time I've ever seen it. And so, where'd you get it?
That came from a book. I'm trying to remember the book, and so it's a motivational speaker, and he was talking about, you know, what changes a person, what, you know, because a lot of times people get stuck in habits and their identity and personal growth, and a lot of times people, they can't overcome their identity. And if you personally think everything you touch, you're a failure, you will always be a failure. And that's the sad thing is there's a lot of people that they don't try to do anything new because they think, well, you know, everything I always tried, you know, doesn't work. And so, and it's that getting to that base when you can challenge that base of your identity, that's when growth and change will happen.
Could you find that source
Yeah, I could find that source.
and email that to me? Because that's
I
really
could.
fascinating stuff. Because that comment and I know you talked about selling the program, sold on the program, and that's why I'm still in it. That's probably why Greg is still in it. That's probably why Jeff is.
Yeah.
None of our kids are.
Well,
but
you
we
know,
are because we saw the value for our children. And I've tried using that mentality with things on a lot of times, and I honestly don't know if I'm getting through. But some of what you said and with that chart might be a helpful thing for
mhm.
future
Well,
ideas.
you know, and then the other thing too is you know, I was one of those guys that I didn't want girls in the program. When that first came out, I was like, no, why don't you just stick them all in the venture program? And my friend, who was our scoutmaster, he had 4 children. He had 2 boys and 2 girls, and he said, Mark, my girls are so jealous of their brothers because all the cool things that they do in our program, and they wish they could do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I actually went through the Scout Oath and Law, and I was like, you know what? There is nothing in here that I would not teach a young lady that I wouldn't teach a young man.
So
And then I had another friend of mine come over, and he said, Mark, it's no different than church camp, you know. when they get older and they go off to summer camp with church, it's all co-ed, and which is
Yep.
true. You know, my son JT, he went off to Ireland and it was co-ed. It was a co-ed trip. And so that was like a personal stumbling block for me. And once I kind of, kind of got into the point of we're helping to develop people. I'm not helping uh, to, mold anything else, and my biggest fear when the girls were coming in was I didn't want to be a chaperone. And, the nice thing is you really don't have to worry about that. When you get to summer camp, there's always an adult leader around. There's always stuff that's going on. There's always the buddy system. And so you don't really have to worry about being a chaperone. And then as I started to do more research in the program, when Baden Powell developed scouting, it was about a year into the program, he came up with Girl Guides. And Girl Guides was all over the world. But a friend of his started up the Girl Scout program here in the United States. And that's when he said, you know what, I'm not gonna, bring Girl Guides to the US. You just keep running with Girl Scouts.
Well, actually, Baden Powell wanted Juliet Lowe to call them Girl Guides and not Girl Scouts. That was a
Yeah.
big contention he had with her on that one. So
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
but then I'm the opposite of you. I was one of those guys that actually called the national office at least 15 years ago, asking why aren't girls in this program? They come to my den meetings. They come to all my outings. They're at
Yeah.
everything. But yes. I
Yes.
was thrilled, totally thrilled when they finally announced it.
Yes, and I'm so thrilled to see some of these girls come through and they're now starting to get their Eagles.
Yep.
And as I said, as you go through that Scout oath and law, what is in there that you wouldn't teach any young person?
And Mark, one other
Yeah.
thing to consider, one reason not to have girls is you get girls in the program and they completely leave the boys in the dust. They make better
Amen to
scouts.
that, Greg.
All right, no comment.
It's kind of embarrassing.
Well, yes, but that I do encourage healthy rivalries with scouts as they're getting older. I mean, my son had a group of friends that they were all competing to try to see who could get their eagle the first. They're all, and that's healthy. They're pushing each other along. They're helping each other, and that's really the cool thing is you get to see them mold and develop into fine young people as they get older. And so I, I they come in, they cross over, they're like 11 years old, and then you see them go out as a fine adult and being able to tackle the world, and you could just see the confidence in them. And the thing that's really interesting is and I've told this story plenty of times. I went to a fundraiser one time because my day job, I'm a financial advisor, and I was at the fundraiser and I was sitting at the table with someone who works on the board of admissions for a very prominent university in America. And when he found out I was a scoutmaster, he said, he says, you guys have no idea how important Eagle Scout is. And I said, okay, tell me. And he said, the first question that they look at before they look at high school transcripts, before they look at ACT and SAT scores, is they look at, are you an Eagle Scout? And if the answer is yes, your whole file gets put into a special file and you move up the ranks a little bit quicker. And so and to me, I was just blown away when I was hearing about this. And so, but uh, the colleges see it, the military sees it. As far as if you go in as an Eagle Scout in the military, you automatically jump 2 or 3 ranks. You go in as an E3. And I have confirmed that with a lot of the recruiters when I'm in the high schools and I'm in the schools and I run into them. They always confirm, yes, you go in as an E3. So it knocks off about 2 years of service before you get those promotions. And so that's how prestigious a lot of these people see what we do and the leadership skills that these young people have when they get out of the program. And so we could go on for hours. I'm going to wrap this up here. It's about 7:25. The final note that I'm going to throw out there is your program. You know, if you are running a quality scout program, you will attract more scouts in. And I have the mentality of you cannot chase butterflies. You can only attract them. And so if you go out and try to chase the butterfly, you'll never catch it. But if you build a beautiful garden, the butterflies just come to you. And so maybe you don't have a ton of scouts in your program. Maybe you only have a handful, but run your program the best that you can run your program. Run it like you were going to run it if you had 50 scouts. Because if you're running it that way, you're preparing yourself in the front end to be able to accept the growth, that you have a quality program, and that when they do show up, when you start to attract the butterflies, you're already prepared for them. You're not scrambling, trying to figure out, how am I going to fit this into my program? So for those that are in leadership, you know, focus on how can I make my program better. If you are in Cub Scouts, make sure you're signing up for Blue. I always recommend Wood Badge for anybody if you're in the Cub Scout program or if you're in Scouts BSA or venturing. If you haven't signed up for Wood Badge, think about it. Put in the time and the effort, because they will really help you develop and show how you can run a quality program for the youth. All right. So with that being said, gentlemen, I will sign off, and you guys have a great night. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks very much, Mark.
Welcome, Mark. Yeah, good job. Thank you. And Mark, I would like to talk to you at some point.
Okay. Well, let me end the
So-
recording and we can chat.